right, welcome everybody to the 2025 version or 2024-2025 version of the RSP Campus to Canton podcast. We're looking to 2025. We're really looking beyond 2025. So, but still, welcome my co-host Felix Sharpe of Campus to Canton, and always glad to reconvene here. We're gonna today talk about one to two players who Felix thinks are on the rise for the, on the college gridiron, and then one to two players who may be backups right now, but could emerge down the line. People that you need to know about. So, Felix, welcome back, and some are good for you.
You know what? They said that you wouldn't welcome me back. Well, look at me now, folks. Back with Matt Waldman in the chair again.
Who said that?
You know what? We don't even need to talk about those people.
Okay.
We don't even need to talk about those people. They're just naysayers. They're just naysayers.
Okay. Well, see, there we go. Look at that. See, now I have to research and see if I have reason not to welcome you back, but I doubt that that's very much the case, judging from the people. But, that's all right. Michael Wilson got a touchdown, so we'll talk to your Campus to Canton buddy about that. Though I just worry for him with Kyler Murray, but that's another story that everyone's well aware of with my hate on Kyler Murray's game in recent years. But anyway, who is somebody that you would mention that you believe is on the rise, that people who follow college football and who are looking for devy picks and and keepers, who should they know about?
I don't know how, when I think about a player on the rise, I don't know how we don't begin this conversation with Cam Ward. Miami quarterback Cam Ward. I think that if you're paying attention, you kind of notice how hot he started. If the Heisman Trophy ceremony was held today, he would be one of the 3 or 4 finalists. That's what I think. But, coming out of Incarnate Ward, 2022, he spent 2 years there. This is actually his 5th season playing. He was at FCS Incarnate Ward. We saw his flashy scrambling style. In 2022, he was going to Washington State with Eric Morris, who was the head coach. He was making the transition from head coach at Incarnate Ward to offensive coordinator at Washington State. Now, in the college game, you got to pay attention to this stuff. Like who your OC is, how their play style, that stuff matters because it goes towards production. For example, if you're a wide receiver at Michigan, well, sorry, I'm just going to write you off because you're not going to be very productive because they haven't just historically. But anyway, Eric Morris runs a spread system. We like that. He comes from Mike Leach's coaching tree. He was actually Mike Leach's offensive coordinator in 2015, where they had second-ranked offense in the country. Sophomore was starting at quarterback for them. You may have heard of him. His name was Patrick Mahomes. So when we see this with Cam Ward and Eric Morris going to Washington State, and we kind of saw his play style, Cam Ward's play style, we're like, all right, we gotta draft this guy highly. So even in the Campus to Canton space, he was highly sought after. Even coming from the FCS ranks. That was the 2022 class that included Nick Singleton, Luther Burden, Teteroa McMillan. Like even amongst those guys, Cam Ward was still a first-round freshman pick in most leagues. But then we get to 2022 and we actually see him play. He's just like kind of blah. Now, right. I think, you kind of expected that, but we saw him be a downfield thrower at Incarnate Ward, but at Washington State, that offense was very east and west, which in fairness, this air raid system really is a very east and west and horizontal offense, but he wasn't good when he tried to throw the ball downfield. He completed just 56% of his passes between 10 and 19 yards downfield in 2022, just 26% of his passes traveling at least 20 or more yards. Not only that, we saw him make mistakes that were just, in my opinion, I can think of one very distinctly. He had broken the pocket, was scrambling out to his right. There was no pressure after he avoided after he avoided that initial pressure. And he's scrambling and he's looking, and he just throws the ball to a safety. It's just like, are you, like, I don't know if you're colorblind or what. Like, it was just a weird mistake to make. And so 2023, he got a little bit better, especially in the second half of the season. Completed 66% of his passes, traveling 10 yards, between 10 and 19 yards, and then 40% of his passes traveling 20 yards or more. And Cam Ward is very much like Bryce Young in the fact that we see him avoid all of this pressure. We know he has the ability to run given that athleticism, but he chooses not to for the most part. And in 2023, he kind of did. Now, he wasn't out there like Justin Fields or anything, but he was getting some first downs with his legs in addition to being more consistent downfield in that intermediate and deep part of the game. Fast forward to this season, 2024, and, I mean, you kind of see the benefit of a player staying in college and refining their game at that level. Now, it's only been 2 games of this season, but he's completing 73% of his passes traveling between 10 and 19 yards through the air. 75% of his passes traveling 20 yards or more. So we went from 2022, those percentages were 56 and 26, to 2024, both over 75%. He's playing with a lot of confidence, and he's probably playing with the best set of skill position players that he's ever played with. Now, remember, I don't know if people are paying attention, but Cam Ward actually declared for the NFL draft after the 2023 season, and then Miami got him to come back and go back to Miami. They probably paid him. That was probably a multi-million-dollar decision, because if he had gone into the 2023 NFL draft, there's like no way he would have been a first-round draft pick. His profile just didn't show all of the things that it needed to. Here in 2024, the dude is a bona fide Heisman candidate. Miami is a resurgent team. You look at their schedule, they're probably going undefeated. They're probably going to be favored in all of their games. And this dude is playing lights out ball. He's already had, a great Heisman moment against Florida, the first game of the season. It was 3rd and 11 at like the 27-yard line. Defense playing coverage behind him. Defensive line ran a stunt. The stunt actually created some pressure. He spins out to his left, so scrambling to his non-throwing side, and throws across his body to the back of the end zone for a touchdown after already being hot that entire game. I mean, that's going to be one of the plays that they play in New York if he's actually a finalist for the Heisman, which I kind of expect him to be. So when you talk about a player on the rise, I mean, I think we went from Cam Ward being, day 3 NFL draft pick to, if you asked, 10 general managers or 32 NFL general managers right now, who would you take number 1? Some of them would say Carson Beck. Some of them would say Shedeur Sanders. Actually, I don't think any of them would say Shedeur Sanders. I think some of them would say Carson Beck. I think some of them would say Cam Ward.
Okay.
Some of them would say Cam Ward, and that would not have been the case last season.
All right, so that's a great breakdown of where he's come from and where he is now, and some of the nuance of that. I really appreciate that. That's great to hear. What I also heard when I heard that, just putting on, say, my skeptical hat, is that, like, when you say, I'd ask, if we were able to ask GMs about this and they'd give the answer, I'd go, so you've seen 2 fucking games, and now he went from a day 3 pick to a day 1 pick. So what I would want to ask is, what did he learn struggling in the air raid offense that has suddenly helped him get his game together? I mean, do you have any thoughts about, like, what possibly having that experience at Washington State and working in a system where he's working spreading the field horizontally, that suddenly now the rest of his game is kind of like coalesced, or is it simply a matter of how people oftentimes underrate the value of surrounding talent, and how now that you get an opportunity to play with good surrounding talent, you get to see that player play to his full capability because now he's no longer worrying about things that he shouldn't have to worry about on a down by down basis. And when he does have to worry about some of those things, the bandwidth is clean enough for him to make some game changing improvisational plays.
So I think it's a little bit of experience in the game slowing down for him, but I think you hit the nail on the head. He's playing with the skill. I mean, he's playing with a couple of guys who are also going to be playing in the NFL. Damian Martinez behind him is a 6'1", 240-pound running back that you can just hand the ball off to, 20 times a game if you need to. Remember, he was playing at Washington State. No, that offense really wasn't emphasizing the running game the way Mario Cristobal and his former offensive line self would want to. And then speaking of the talent around him, Xavier Restrepo just might be the best slot wide receiver in college football. I'm trying to think if there's another one that's better, but also a veteran of the game. Is going to have over 100 receptions this season. And Restrepo has gotten better himself. So I think it's a combination of just having been – so he went from FCS to playing Power 4 football. And now he's in his third season playing Power 4 football with the best talent around him that he's ever had. Jacoby George, a wide receiver out there, is a very good player. Sam Brown, who transferred from Houston, is a very good player. Elijah Arroyo is one of these, at least from high school to college, he was one of these wide receiver tight end hybrids who's dealt with injuries. He's finally healthy. So when you put all of that together, and plus the NIL stuff in Miami actually paying for some talent to bring Ward in, to bring Damian Martinez, the running back, in, he's playing with the best talent that he's ever had, and those guys are really, really helping him. But I mean, some of the mistakes that I saw Cam Ward make, like that, I explained that just throwing to a safety, like when you're there's the picture didn't change. It's not like, you snap the ball, the defense adjusted, and you just mistaked it. You just threw to the wrong person. I'm not seeing him make mistakes like that now. And he always had the dude is like, it's like chasing a chicken, in the back. Like he will give himself 7 and 8 seconds to throw the ball after avoiding pressure. He's always had that. Now he's just making better decisions once he does avoid that pressure, and he's throwing the ball downfield. He's getting, some of those big plays, just putting the feather on his cap as far as his game goes.
So what would you like to see from him that you haven't seen yet, that you believe he needs to have to answer to validate the potential for him to become a first-round draft pick?
I really like quarterbacks who make free throws, and not always going for the deep three. You will have, let's say you roll out and you have your primary option is like a tight end in the flat or a fullback in the flat. He's like never picking that play. Okay. Like, just get the first down, dude, and you don't have to do a
little more hero. He's a little more hero ball at this point.
100%. And he just doesn't take what's given to him sometimes. And I think the game at the next level is going to be so difficult that you just have to take the short option sometimes. You just have to take the first open man and not always look to scramble to create this backyard football essence and create a big play. Like, just do your 3-step drop, hit the slant that's open. You can do that sometimes too.
Take what's there. Yeah. Okay, so that's a great answer and a good breakdown of Cam Ward. Just before we go either to your next one, your next emerging candidate, or if you have players on the rise or guys who you think could emerge from being backups, just out of curiosity, where would you rate Kevin Concepcion among slot receivers? Is he a slot receiver?
Oh, he's 100% a slot wide receiver, but he's one of these guys that they move all over the place. They'll give him jet sweeps. They'll put him in the backfield. I'm not going to call him Deebo Samuel, but he will be used in the running game just as much as in the passing game. Where would I put him as far as? I mean, he's definitely after. I think he's after Xavier Restrepo.
Okay.
Kevin Concepcion at NC State. So, I would have to think about it. Maybe next episode I'll have to go write down who are some of the best slot wide receivers. Emeka Ibuka,
Okay.
And Ohio State is up there.
Okay.
So yeah, we got to think about that one.
Okay. Cool. Well, that's good for later. So who? So do you have a second guy on the rise, or do you have a couple guys to emerge down the line? Hit me with who you got.
I'm always thinking about my audience here. Like, I want people to watch college football. So Miami's going to be a team on national television. Go watch Cam Ward. Alabama and Ohio State, always two teams on national television. And so go watch their two true freshman wide receivers. At Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith. I mean, I feel like I'm cheating here because I'm always trying to go for like some of the deeper names. But no, if you're going to go watch football, watch number 4 for Ohio State, wide receiver. He's the highest rated wide receiver recruit of all time. Number 3 is Julio Jones. Number 5 is Percy Harvin. You know, and the question coming into the season wasn't, you know, how good is our 6'3", 215-pound true freshman alpha? It was, is he actually going to start? Because Ohio State actually has a relatively deep wide receiver core room, as you would expect. But not only is he starting, but he's leading the team in receiving. He's leading the team in receiving as an 18-year-old for a Chip Kelly offense, a team that actually wants to run the football. Jeremiah Smith averaging over 100 yards receiving per game. It's only been 2 games, but we've seen him, you know, have the body control in the end zone and catch a fade. We've seen him outrun the entire Western Michigan University defense on a hitch and, you know, take the ball, caught it 5 yards on the line of scrimmage and take the ball 70 yards, Kalamazoo stand down, or I guess in that case, sit down. So that's Jeremiah Smith. Ryan Williams at Alabama is 17 years old. He reclassified. He should be a senior in high school right now. Joined Kalen DeBoer's Alabama team. He is, I think, the most productive wide receiver in Alabama State high school history. That's where he's from. He is also leading Alabama in receiving through 2 games, and that one's not particularly close. He has like 270 yards receiving. The next closest person has like 70 or something like that. And this dude just keeps getting behind defenses. So I feel like by the way, Jeremiah Smith, we knew he was coming. And in one C2C league, I tried to trade your boy Keon Coleman and Jonathan Brooks for the number 1 pick to like somebody I thought was unsuspecting, didn't know that Jeremiah Smith was that dude. I got turned down. I got rejected. And you know what? I could have probably made the same offer for Ryan. Actually, no, I wouldn't. I would not have made the same offer for Ryan Williams. But regardless, we're looking, 3 years from now. Both of these guys are going to be at the top of draft boards. The draft nicks are going to be talking about these 2 true freshman wide receivers. And so if you're turning the games on Saturday, watch for Jeremiah Smith. Watch for true freshman Ryan Williams. And don't forget, Ryan Williams, he won't turn 18. I think his birthday is February 9th. He will not turn 18 until next year. He should be a senior in high school right now, and he's dominating in the SEC. Well, SEC at Alabama.
As a fellow February baby myself, I was quite happy to get my hands on Ryan Williams shares in my one devy league. So I think thanks to you, as a matter of fact, because I believe I hit you up and said, hey, here's some guys I'm thinking about, and also who are some guys I should be thinking about. Here's the list of guys that are already gone, because I was already like on vacation mode in I think in May when we had our devy draft for players. But Williams was definitely one I was happy to get. So definitely a fun pair of names there. How about any backups that we should be looking at down the line here? Guys that you're just like, okay, well, people are going to forget about them a little bit, but let's keep an eye out, because just like the Cam Ward situation where he was a starter, but still he wasn't on a marquee team. Who are some guys that emerge and you go, I didn't know who that was. I mean, look at Ashton Jonty in terms of, the fact that George Holani was in front of him for several of these years, and then the past couple years we're like, there we go.
So the funny thing about, if I could talk about Ashton for a second, So we as a company, I think Ashton was like the 30 or 80th ranked wide receiver according to the traditional recruiting services. We highlighted him as a company, as a player that we thought could actually, go gangbusters. So we interviewed Ashton before his freshman season. I actually have his number in my cell phone because we talked about potentially doing a podcast with Ashton. And it's so funny that you mentioned him because as far as backups who could emerge, it's Sire Gaines, who is Ashton Genty's backup.
There you go.
Sire Gaines from California. He was a tweener. He played both wide receiver and running back in high school. He was designated as an athlete. He was the 821st player in the 2024 class, according to 24/7 Sports. 6 foot, 209 pounds. His junior year in high school, when he was still playing both running back and wide receiver, went over 800 and 800 in both. You don't see that usually. If you don't normally see somebody get close to 1,000 and 1,000 at the high school level, but he did it. It looks like he switched to running back his senior year and did over 1,600 yards rushing his senior year. But he is definitely the number 2 behind Ashton. Already has a game over 100 yards rushing. Is a bigger player than Ashton. Is a bigger player than Ashton than Ashton and has the receiving chops. So when I'm talking about a player who could be on the rise, Ashton Genty is making the jump to the NFL after this season, and it's going to be Sire Gaines, this true freshman, 6 foot, already 200. That's one thing that we like to see with freshman running backs is once the season starts, are they over 200 pounds? Because we see that they can usually get to that 215-pound mark if they're at 200 pounds when they start their freshman season. Sire Gaines is already at 209. In 3 years, he'll probably be 217, 218, something like that at 6 foot with these receiving chops. And clearly the number 2 there behind Ashton. And there was another running back there who we thought could potentially take over, a smaller speed guy, but Sire is the second leading rusher on that team. So when we're fast forwarding to 2025, it's going to be him all day in that backfield. So watch out for Sire Gaines.
Nice. Okay. Well, look, we got a good handful of players that we can look at and be looking forward to watching throughout the season. We're going to end this show talking a little bit about a running back prospect, and do you have one more?
I do have one more. I'm sorry, I can't help myself.
It's okay. Go ahead.
I can't help myself.
Okay. We got one more.
This is the deep dive. Okay?
Good.
Michael Pratt came out of Tulane. I think he was drafted by the Green Bay Packers. We liked Michael Pratt early on. The player that has replaced him, Darian Mensah, I think is one of the best passers in the country. There are some players that I liked when they were playing at lower levels of competition. Cam Ward, Jake Hayner, Carson Strong. There's some others I can't think of.
It's a good list.
But that's, and I see the same type of traits. I'm like, this guy is not going to be playing at Tulane after this year. Like LSU is going to call him. Alabama's going to call him. Now he is a drop back passer that you need to protect, but he loves to throw the ball to aggressively downfield. He's not afraid. He's a great ball placement. He's great with his ball placement. There are some things that you see him try that you just don't see a lot of group of 5 quarterbacks attempt. Like, hey, my 6'4" tight end is covered down here in the red zone, and yes, there's a safety over the top, but I think I can put this ball right here, and you see him do it. I think Darian Mensah is going to be playing at the Power 4 level next season, and that's just another player I would just want folks to watch out.
That's a great get. That's absolutely a great get. I appreciate that you did mention him, and I saw you go, wait, I got one more. Okay, so with that in mind, we'll end the show. We'll talk about end the show on a note of we're going to play the little game with Felix and say door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. These are running backs that I don't know if they have high draft capital. I don't think they probably, most of them I don't think do, but we'll categorize it as small, medium, and large. What do you want to hear about? The small, medium, or large?
Man, I love him, Rondre Stevenson. I like him big, so give me large.
Okay. Large to me is a back out of Texas Tech, number 28, 5'10", 230, Tahj Brooks, who reminds me of kind of a mix of Chris Brooks, who's a big favorite of, low key, kind of emerging player of mine, and Anthony Dixon way back in the day, Booby Dixon from Mississippi State, who had a cup of coffee with the 49ers, but all he could run was really gap plays. But I watched 4 games of Tahj Brooks. Watched him last year against Oregon, Kansas State, Texas, and Cal. And what really just stuck out to me, besides the fact that anybody who's a Texas Tech receiver can catch the football, that's just basically a requirement in that offense. But I was very impressed with his understanding of nuance to set up blockers. He knows how to change his stride length and set up lead blocks. He runs power, and he's patient to set up those lead blockers, and he'll draw defenders into those blocks. He finds cutbacks after the appropriate reads of leverage on gap plays are filled. So he doesn't try and go for cutbacks automatically, which is almost a death knell on a lot of plays with pulling linemen, but he knows how to find them and access them when needed. He's very good at identifying penetration during the exchange with his quarterback, and he has the footwork to really understand how to change direction, somewhere between about 45 to 60 degrees when he's at his top speed in the middle of the field, but also behind the line of scrimmage. He can open his hips 90 degrees and make those cuts. And he has jump stops and jump cuts. He can move around in tight space, but he's really discriminating with how he uses that movement. So he's not just like a one-note guy who, once you figure him out, watch for the spin, Rashard Mendenhall, watch for the spin. That's not what this guy, Tahj Brooks, is. He has a lot of pitches in his arsenal, and he knows when to use them. And he often beats second and third level defenders with combinations of footwork, different types of jukes and moves. I think his most effective is a stutter with a head fake and shoulder dip, and he follows it up really well with a stiff arm. But he's also good at just getting his feet up through low shots. He's good with the high knees and high feet, which all the good running backs show. And I think there's enough acceleration that he gets past box defenders on perimeter runs to the short side of the field, which is the harder one to accelerate past. That's really the display of short range speed to me, not like the long, not to the far side. The far side's more about long speed more often than not than it is about short end acceleration. So he's not a burner, and he's not going to test well probably on the speed end of the spectrum, but he forces gang tackling, and he's going to pull through multiple reaches, wraps, or hits, and his stiff arm, it's strong enough that he pulls through wraps to his chest from defensive tackles. And again, I mentioned he played Texas and Cal and some pretty nice teams, Kansas State, some pretty nice teams that usually have some decent guys there. And his contact balance, he'll run right through a safety or a linebacker and forces them to slide down and wrap, and he's going to stalemate tackles that give him direct shots to his chest and pads when they've earned momentum downhill, and he's only had a minimal amount of space to get momentum. So you're talking about a guy who can win both with moves and with power and with contact balance, and he has an understanding of how to run routes out of the backfield at Texas Tech. He's got some counters and some footwork moves when he's split wide, and this is why he reminds me of Chris Brooks, because it's like Brooks did a lot of that at Cal and was featured in the passing game split wide at Cal. And Tahj Brooks does a good job with catching the ball. He's aware of the boundary. He's got good just body awareness of how to attack. So, overall, and then considering what he does playing in that offense, they have wide splits with their offensive line. They spread the field. You need your running backs to block. So this is a guy who, again, he identifies pressures pretty well. He can overextend and he tips off his position, but he's someone that identifies green dog blitz as well. Peel off primary assignments, that don't come and then help out another blocker. He's good at corner and slot blitzes, and when he doesn't overextend or he times his hits enough that the overextension doesn't matter, he'll roll through his hips to generate power. And I've seen him win against defensive linemen who come off a guard or a tackle's block and come free, and now it's Brooks' turn to take them. So, there's potential for him to become a real dog in the passing game. And he's had 670 career touches with only 3 fumbles. And that's an average of 1 fumble per 223 touches. That is elite. And that may not seem like that matters, but I did a study this summer looking at all my RSP data and looking at players who produce in the NFL on a fantasy level. And I found that if you fell below an acceptable rate of ball security in college, only 3% of those backs who fell below that level ever earned elite production in the 6-year period that I studied those backs. Only 10% even earned RB1 or RB2 production, meaning that 90% of the backs who fall below an acceptable tier of ball security aren't NFL starters in a fantasy league. They're not top 24 guys. So you need to show that ability. And if you correct it, what that may say, we'll put it this way. What that may say is that if you correct it, it probably alters how you run a bit because you're concentrated on trying to hold on to the ball rather than reading the field as clearly as you did in the past, or you're not finishing as strong, or, you're a little preoccupied with it. And that there's some folks who overcome that, or they just never get better, or get the chance to prove that they've gotten better. So Tahj Brooks...
Tiki Barber, when he changed the way he carried the ball,
Yeah. So, I like Tahj Brooks. He fits into the same category as Chris Brooks in the sense that he'll have a good score probably on the RSP. That'll be probably he'll be a playable option immediately, at least as a contributor, but he's probably not going to get drafted, or if he does, it'll be on day 3, and he'll be trying to win a final spot in camp and have to work his way upward a depth chart to have a contributing role. But 5'10", 230-pound backs still have value in today's NFL. James Conner will tell you that. Joe Mixon will tell you at 230 a thing or two. Gus Edwards is still telling us a thing or two. I think Audric Estime may get his chance down the line too to barrel and hurdle over people for a little while. So it's it's about the range of skills that they offer, and Brooks is a big back with a modern game's skill set.
He was the centerpiece of that offense last year because they dealt with multiple injuries at the quarterback position. When I say the centerpiece of the offense, he carried the ball 290 times last season. Derrick Henry last year in however many games, he only carried the ball 280 times. So you're talking about this dude would have, led the NFL in rushing attempts if he were the NFL. And
don't let that scare you before you go on. Just don't let that scare you because, again, one of the things I've also looked at over the years is when you look at Cedric Benson, Ray Rice, Frank Gore, Adrian Peterson, a lot of names like that. Yeah. Matt Forte, those guys toted the ball a lot, and the mileage was not a big deal for any of them. In fact, what it shows you usually is that guys who can tote the ball at that level don't wear down. They show that they've proven that they don't wear down or wear out, and that they can handle it. And that's something that you want to realize when you're studying prospects. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was the same question with Jonathan Taylor coming out because he was the primary ball carrier since his freshman season, and workload was a question for him too. So,
Well, good deal. Well, look, we covered a lot of ground this week. In a couple weeks, we'll cover some more. And we appreciate that you join us here on the RSP Campus to Canton podcast. Certainly go to campustocanton.com. Go check out their leagues. You get a chance to play both college fantasy football and pro fantasy football, where they are all part of your team. They just migrate on to your pro team once you pick them in college. So it gives you that added dimension of being invested in these guys from the very beginning, or as close to the beginning as what we think is appropriately possible. Because I honestly think if we get to high school fantasy football, that's going to get a little creepy, if you ask me. But let's stick to the college game, and certainly you can go there to check out the leagues. They're a fast growing group. Anything that you want to share about what you guys have going on in terms of that I didn't mention.
No, we've seen some real momentum this year. I think due partly to the college football video game being released and people recognizing the name, and there being a resurgence in interest in college fantasy football. So, we've from pretty much any metric that you can measure, we've seen enormous and exponential growth. So if you have any questions about college fantasy in general, you can just shoot me a DM at Sharpe Review on Twitter. And then check us out on the YouTube page. We're doing a pregame show, just like Reese Davis and Kirk Herbstreit and those guys. We're doing that pregame show from a college fantasy perspective on Saturday morning. So check out Campus to Canton, the YouTube page.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, got checks coming out tomorrow. I just finished a 12 or 13 minute film review of Gabriel Davis and Brian Thomas, kind of a comparison and contrast in terms of how they're used in Jacksonville. And I'm going to revisit Tank Bigsby and how he did this week. And that'll be in this week's Gut Check, as well as available on YouTube at the RSP Film Room. You'll get a chance to see both those videos available coming soon. And then the roundtable comes up Wednesday night. We're going to continue the question about how do you manage September football. We'll also look at the subscriber contest at Football Guys and see what some of my folks think, as well as who are some false positives and false negatives after week one, and what to do about the 49ers running back situation, and how to manage that and all the potential things that could happen stemming from it after McCaffrey was out, and what could happen if his injuries linger. Who do we focus on? All of that. I also have out my scouting report, my pre-draft report on Jordan Mason, that's available for free at the RSP site.
Jordan Mason, who shared the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs at Georgia Tech,
and was more elusive.
Yeah, we need to give Jeff Collins some credit, because that dude recorded 2 beasts at the running back position at Georgia Tech, which isn't exactly an easy school to recruit to. So
yeah, I'm gonna end with a story about Georgia Tech. There was a high school classmate or fellow alumni in high school in my time, who his name was Mark. We'll just call him Mark. I don't remember his last name right now off the bat because I'm thinking about too many names over the past couple of years. But his nickname was Shoes. And actually, his nickname was Sandals. He lives in Athens. He's an acoustic guitar player. He's got long, thick, curly hair that's in a ponytail, the spectacles, and he created baby lullabies for the local hospital that they hand out to the parents of newborns. The gentlest looking dude walks around in sandals all day. And I remember my friends, back in my 20s, we were going to have a pickup game in Athens and play a little bit. And some of these guys were some pretty big dudes, and they played some ball. And I remember they were like, "You remember Mark? You remember Sandals? Remember when Sandals played with us that one time? Yeah, we're never playing with Sandals again." And I was like, "Sandals? Who's Sandals?" And they're like, "Mark." And they say his name, and I keep thinking, that guy sounds familiar. I don't know why. And so they start talking about, he was a running back at high school. And he's about my height. He was like 5'10", 185, probably. He's like running back in high school, and he returned kicks at Georgia Tech back for Bill Curry, back when Bill Curry was coaching Georgia Tech way back in the day. And I was like, oh, I know him. He played at my high school. He was a starting running back in high school. They said, dude, we didn't know. And so we kicked the ball off to him, and he ran through like 4 of us and didn't break stride, and we were all like on the ground hurting. And then by the time we needed a minute to get up and get ready, we kicked it off, and then he laid out one of us, and that guy didn't play anymore. And then we kicked it off, and the guy fumbled, and he picked it up and scored. So then we kicked it off again. He caught it and ran through us some more, and then we had another kickoff, and we downed it, and then we tried to throw a pass, and he picked it off and ran through us, and we were so hurt after he ran through us, on like 5 plays, we just called the game. It was like over, and so I just laugh because whenever I think of Georgia Tech, I think of my high school teammate or my high school alum who literally, they're built, guys who return kickoffs are just built different, and that dude was built different. But I just love the dissonance of that. He's basically a local musician who plays acoustic guitar lullabies and wears sandals all the time. They call him Sandals, and he literally just beat the shit out of like 5 guys on another team within about 5 plays that they just said, fuck it, we're not playing with him anymore. So,
yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah. But, I like hearing plays like that. Next time we'll talk about maybe Ryan Riddle and his wild-eyed tackle taking out 2 people on a kickoff. But it's time for us to go. We appreciate you listening, and as always, and have a good night.